So welcome to another war game review for theplayersaid.com.
You know what? It's a good game.
You know what?
Who cares what you call it?
So this is 1815 Scum of the Earth. This is from a company called All or Nothing Productions, which I believe they're out of England.
Yes.
This is a two-player competitive card game, and it simulates like the campaign leading up to and the Battle of Waterloo. Obviously, in a card game, that is very kind of abstracted and stripped down, but it's this little two-player duel game. Plays in what, 45 minutes?
Yep, I think 40 minutes once you get the rules down.
We sat down,
30
played
to 40
this,
minutes.
learnt it. It's like 6 pages of rules, and we played it twice. And
Yeah.
if you watch the unboxing, half the draw of this game is a just stunning artwork. I can't speak highly enough of it. This company uses a company called The Creation Studio, I believe, and they did the artwork for it. There's a couple other titles in this series, which I don't...
1565 is one.
Yes.
Which is like St. Elmo.
Yes, 1565, and the other one was it 1066? Tears So Many Mothers?
Yes.
Yes. And it's beautiful card art. It's beautiful to play with and to look at. The little damage counters are like wooden, and they've got like, they're printed with numbers on them. And it's very reminiscent of some of the living card game style of play from something like Fantasy Flight. We played a lot of the Lord of the Rings living card game.
Because you have these objectives that you're trying to accomplish.
And it's like a deck of cards that
Right.
if you have a couple of sets, you can play around with the construction of the decks and things like that. Do you remember that Star Wars living card game we played? We played it like twice, and I got rid of it. It was by Fantasy Flight as well.
I remembered it was interesting. I'm not sure I just don't remember a lot about it.
I sold it because it was anachronistic, because you can have like stormtroopers shooting Star Destroyers, and it was kind of dumb.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I kind of remember that.
It was like, it didn't make a lot of sense. Like stunning, but this is very much reminded me of that, because had the objectives and it was competitive, whereas Lord of the Rings is co-op.
Yeah.
Anyway, Scum of the Earth, Battle of Waterloo, but it's like the campaign, so you play through a certain number of objectives, trying to race to get to Waterloo first. And then once you're at Waterloo, you kind of duke it out, and then there's these 3 frontiers, which is the whole Battle of Waterloo. And you're fighting over a bit more of a tactical scale those areas. You have this little tactical area that has 3 columns and 3 rows, 9 spaces, and those are kind of the frontiers of the battle that you're fighting on.
Yeah.
And as guys die in the front rows, the back rows fill up, and you're going to put more guys in, things like that. It's a really neat little 2-player game. Beautiful and fun and quick to play as well.
Yeah.
I will say, I saw this game. You did an interview with a designer on a blog, like
I want to say 3 years
forever ago,
3.5 years ago.
And then
was this just fulfilled?
It was fulfilled in 2022. I don't know exactly when.
6 months, give or take.
Yeah, but I saw Alex from Storms of Steel Wargaming. He took pictures of the cards as he was playing it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm buying it for the artwork. It looks kind of like an LCG that I might know how to play and enjoy, but I probably don't care anyway because it looks stunning." Went on to Noble Knight Games; they had it.
Yeah.
So even though it's printed and made in England by an English company, you can get it here in the US. A sponsor of ours, Noble Knight Games, appreciate them having it. Got it. And we played it, and it was great. It did exactly what I wanted it to do, which was a nice, pacey little 2-player card game that looks great.
Well, and what I would say is it's a card game, competitive, like you've said, but it's very asymmetric. Each side's very different.
Yes.
You have different types of units. You have different types of tactics that frankly, we didn't get a lot into because
I was trying to get them to go.
I was too.
They're quite
but you
difficult.
kept killing my guys up front. But there's a lot of asymmetry. You have a lot of different cards that I didn't have. I had some different cards that you didn't have. Our leaders generally were the same. You had Lord Wellington and I had Napoleon, and we're kind of, or Wellesley, right? It's
Wellington.
They call him Wellington. But it's like we each could move guys from one frontier to another.
Yes.
Kind of
Yeah, he's commanding, right? He's moving some dudes around.
You kept sending your guy up front, which I thought was interesting. That's where he starts, and that's where he has to stay.
That's where he starts, unless you get the horse attachment, and then he can move around. Right?
I don't think I ever saw the horse attachment.
Yeah, I never got it. I saw it twice. It was in my deck both games. But it's fun little bits and pieces like that where you know, a little bit of theme, and then he can move so that. And you would want to do that because then it might be easier to form a 2x2 block of infantry where he was blocking the way before. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then you can use that 4x4 block of infantry to trigger one of your tactics cards, and those are very, very strong.
Yeah.
Like if you can get the big tactics on your like abstract display on your tableau,
very powerful.
You trigger those. They're going to be decisive almost.
Ultimately, what they do is they like the infantry square destroys a cavalry unit, and it's like you can pick any cavalry unit. So it's like you create a protected square, and those cavalry come at you, and you just gun them down. So that's one. I think the cavalry one is destroy an infantry unit.
But you have to have a whole row of cav, and it's the cav charge,
It's not easy.
It's great though.
But it's a very cool thematic, I think, addition to the way the combat works. I also really like the concept of the frontiers. You know, these are really, in essence, 3 different places, 3 different campaigns are going on. And you've got units that you play into one frontier. They fight in that battle. They fight really against the units on the other side.
Yes, there's like the flank almost, if you think about it that way, right?
And then you fight back and forth in some ways through card play. And when you finally both sides get to Waterloo, then you start fighting over these battles and
it's literally in this flank, in this frontier, I'm going to add up my might values.
Right.
I'm going to compare them to yours. And the difference is whoever's got the
3
most.
higher than you. I add 3 of my tokens there. I need 10 to win.
Yep.
All of a sudden, I only need 7 now.
And so, you could do it over. So then I'm going to be like, I'm going to push more guys in there. Or I might
you got to move a card around. Yep.
It's really fun. Again, for a card game, this is exactly what I wanted it to.
Well, and it feels, I mean, I kept thinking to myself, I feel as if I'm a commander on the field of battle trying to move my resources to where they were going to do the best.
Yes.
I knew, okay, this one over here, I've won. Not going to worry about it. I need to move my grognards, my old guard, over to the right to get them into this frontier because they had such powerful zeal and such powerful might. And they had a lot of health as well, so you weren't really going to kill them.
Yeah, much harder.
Didn't get those out in the second game, and there were 3 of those cards in my deck. They just didn't come out. But it really felt like I was moving those troops around, and I liked that. It was
and I feel like
very cool.
In the first game, we came up much more of like the congestion as well, which I think even that is a really neat aspect of, even like Napoleonics and pre-Napoleonics. Moving your troops around is not easy. So difficult.
Yeah.
And it was like, if the battlefield, if this flank is full, it's like, do I sacrifice guys to like basically pull them off the line and they're out of the game? Then everyone rushes forward. Then you've put some reserves in. Like the movement aspect of it can be very, challenging and lots to play with and make it work properly. It's
but
cool.
it feels, once again, it feels appropriate.
Yes.
Once again, it feels as if I'm looking at what's going on, trying to understand what I have, and then moving those guys out and moving new guys in. I really like that aspect of it.
In a 40-minute game.
Yeah, in a 40-minute game.
Right? Like it's
with beautiful art.
It would be very easy to make something like this overly complicated and like overly engineered. And I think really not.
When we were first, I was like, oh, this is a little, but then it clicked. It started clicking. I got it. I understood that concept. Great. And really had a good time. We played twice, basically in a little over an hour. That was learning the rules, playing through the game. The first game came down to the wire.
It was very close. And I was like, yes, this is great.
Yeah. I mean, you won. I think we had each defeated one of the frontier or one of the objectives. And then this one, we were fighting it out. And I think you got a card that you moved a guy over and
killed everyone.
And you won by like 2. And I was like, oh, that felt really satisfying.
Yeah. Like, we got 1 apiece, and this one was 11-9. Right?
Yeah.
That's, for 3, that's great.
Oh, yeah. And for the first play, especially.
Yeah.
Now, the second game, I felt like I got a little bit of card. I felt like my good cards weren't coming up.
And I felt like I only had my good cards.
Right. And what I mean by my good cards, my cards that only cost 1 or 2 resources but had good abilities, They just weren't coming up.
And I had a lot of those early.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
And that's going to
get it,
happen
John.
with this kind of game. I actually shuffled that deck about 40 times as we were sitting there, and it just, that's the luck of the draw. Now, the next game, I may get every card that I need.
Yeah.
The interesting thing also is these objectives, and that may be something that's bad because it's going to repeat itself, but I kind of know what's coming. I'm like, okay, these first two are zeal related.
Yes.
I got to play guys out with zeal and focus on that. Then the third, fourth, and fifth one, it may be a little, but they're focused on might. So I hope the zeal guys I played had at least one or two might, or then they become kind of unuseful.
Yes.
So I liked that aspect. We discussed, could that become too repetitive?
Right. I think of something like some of the other living card games we've played that come with like 4 or 5 different scenarios in it and like all these other bits and pieces. It's really like just the one game mode, basically. There's a couple of different variants, and there's a Prussian expansion, I believe it is.
Where you would play, rather than the British, you would play as the Prussians.
Yeah, you get Blucher and
so you're always going to play the French, but you get Blucher.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that.
So that's going to add some variety.
Yeah.
We didn't get that.
No,
that
that's a separate thing. There's a full solo mode as well, and but just as a little game that, especially people who aren't like super mega hardcore war gamers, you're gonna play this on a lunch break. You're gonna stick this in a gaming session like we did, where we played a bigger game before.
Yeah, we played a 3-hour war game, and
it's not strenuous. It's just a fun little card game. Pretty low stakes.
But I do think you're gonna play this 15, 20 times before I think you really start to see that deck is pretty thick.
Yes.
I mean, you've got, is it 60 cards? I feel like that's 60 cards.
It's 50 or 60, yeah.
So 60 cards, and you're only gonna play about
50.
There's 50 cards.
Well, I don't know how many.
Okay,
but minimum 50, maximum 75 if you're deck building.
Okay, but I feel like you're only going to play maybe 50%. So I think every game's going to be different because different cards are going to come out.
And there's like a speed variant where instead of drawing 2 cards, you can fill your whole hand up to 6.
I'd like to try that once just to see how bloody it gets.
It would be extremely fast and extremely bloody, and that would be an enjoyable experiment for sure.
Because part of the game and the way it's set up is you're kind of building, right? The first 3, maybe 4 or 5 turns, you might play 1 unit down. Then the next turn, you might play a second down. You get a guy down that also provides you a resource point. So all of a sudden I can play a couple guys now. And you start to build up your army. Now, there are a lot of mean-spirited cards. I think if you're...
that's something to say. If you're not into like wargaming, this has a lot of like gotcha cards.
And gotcha cards in the respect, I just kill your guy.
Yeah.
I poison that leader.
It's really like this specific guy ate the picnic and he died.
Yeah.
Or it's like, I played, what is it? Now Maitland is the card, and it kills 2 guys from a frontier.
And
it's very devastating. Or it's like, just like do a damage. Like one of my champion guy, you just put him out and he does 2 damage to a guy in the frontier.
Yeah.
So like, that's the one.
Yeah.
And
is that Grouchy's?
It's probably like
Grouchy's Fruity Punch or Fruity Picnic.
Fruity Picnic, yeah.
Yeah, and it has to be...
It's specifically
that specific guy, and I happen to have him out.
Or he just mires one other person, but
so at least that's not like anybody, right? No. So they make it a little niche.
And again, the more you play it, the more that you're going to know that that's in there. And so you're watching for someone to have discarded that something.
I don't really ever get to see your discard.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I could focus on that, but I'm trying to focus on my own. But yeah, there are a lot of those, kill that unit, or... Do 2 wounds to a unit in a frontier, and
it's a battle game.
Yeah.
So like
it didn't bother me.
Co-op. You're not under any impressions that this is you're trying to defeat your enemy, and you will have to do things that are like ugh.
But I do think that goes back to my comment about the asymmetry. I did not have a lot of cards like that. I had units that did damage to units.
Yes.
But they were specifically tied to. What are they? They don't call it tapping because you can't call it tapping.
It was
tiring. So I had to tire my guy to do a damage,
Yes.
or tire my guy to eliminate that unit. So there's some asymmetry, but you've got to get familiar with your deck, but you also got to get familiar with your enemy deck to understand, like you said, I'm not going to play that card until I really need to or feel, because that was a good card, I could have held on to it because it was expensive.
Well, and in the first game, I had that little picnic card really early and was like, this is really specific, I'm going to throw it away.
Right.
And then you pulled that guy out at the end, and he's really strong.
He's very
and I was
strong.
like, uh-oh, that's what that was for.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of that, but there is some mean-spiritedness. It was funny because we play enough of these games that if there's something, just do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't love it. I wasn't sitting there going, oh, thank you so much. That felt so good.
It doesn't feel great.
But you played the one card that, what was it called?
The torrential
rain. And it clogged up one of these spaces, and I wanted to move my old guard in there, but that was fine. I had to spend resources to get rid of it. That was fine. It slowed the game down. I could have put another guy down, but that's the way it goes. And that one didn't feel as bad as kill 2 of your guys.
Well,
I'm like,
I was trying to play that and then kill the 2 guys. There was nothing there. So
Yeah, that would have been
But I couldn't. I didn't have enough
really
cards to
bad.
make that go.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I just think the art is so fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so awesome to see it. It looks great on the table. And they're all different.
Yes, I'm going to show you how this works, and we're going to show off the artwork because it's absolutely stunning. Then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the game kind of setup. This is the very end of our game, but basically the play area has these 3 frontiers, are what they called. Kind of, they're like objectives. At the end, during the Battle of Waterloo, these are the kind of the 3 sections. So you have the center with Lyson Farm, and then you have as the French are looking at it, the left and the right flank. Obviously that's reversed for the British. That's just the way that we had it set up. The game comes with a deck of French cards, deck of British cards, and these are wholly unique between the 2 players, and they are made up of like cavalry units, leaders, individual characters, some like extra attachments. You might get events, so things that happen, and then there's there's a spyglass event, and then there's like artillery units. There's a bunch of infantry, veterans, and things like that. All sorts of stuff. And again, the British have their own versions of a deck. It's all quite different. Then over to the side, you'll have a deck of objective cards. What you have to do is you have to play through and defeat all these objectives as you get towards the Battle of Waterloo. So you kind of half play the Waterloo campaign in a very, very abstract way. Then, once you get to the final objective, which is the Battle of... No, what happened to the Battle of Waterloo? Oh, it's under here, that's right. The Battle of Waterloo is the last objective. Once you get here, you then fight a more... This then becomes a pitched battle where you're fighting over these 3 objectives. Whoever wins 2 of these 3 wins the game. So you're going to fight through these objectives. The first one is just kind of a holding pattern. This is automatically destroyed. Then for this one, to defeat this, you have to have, for every little plus symbol, which is it's actually a cross, and that is for... Oh, it is for... Well, let me turn that off. So the cross is for zeal, and there is also a cannon, which is might. You know, it's like zeal and might, 2 different attack factors, different types. And then there's a blood drop, which is usually hit points. So for every zeal you have in your tableau above 2, you're going to inflict a damage on this. You need to have 7 damage to defeat objective B. Then you can move on to objective C. For every might above 3, you're going to add a wound to this. You need 6 to defeat it. Then the next one is for every might. So you spent all this time building up zeal to defeat those 2. Well, then it's going to flip. For every might you have above 2, you need to get 8. And for every might above 4, you need 6. So you're progressing through these objectives. Hopefully you're kind of building an army as you go with different units, different leaders, And as you progress through those, hopefully you've got strong guys that synergize well, or a variety of guys. You should have a good amount of zeal and a good amount of might by the end of it to get through all of those in a timely fashion. And then once both players have got through to the Battle of Waterloo, the turns play out normally, but instead of doing these objectives, you fight battles. And at that point, what you're doing is you're going to... Well, let's get a card down here. That's attachment. Here we go. Let's just toss one of these guys in so that we can look at it better. You're going to fight a might battle in each one of these 3 frontiers, and you compare everything that's in this row, and then or column, and then you're going to do the same thing in this one for all of the stuff in this column, and then the same thing for this one. And then once you've done that, you're going to fight a zeal battle in each one of these columns, and they score differently, and what that looks like is different. But effectively what we're going to do, and I'll turn these around so that you can see them a little bit better, but the icons are kind of small for the camera, so we'll just, I'll just kind of go through the numbers here. To fight a battle, you play through your cards, and we'll talk about card play here in a second, but to fight a battle, you're going to compare the might. So I've got 2 cannon, 4 cannon symbols here, and then they have 3 and 0. The difference between 4 and 3 is 1. In favor of the British, they're going to add 1 damage to this. If it was 1 the other way, instead of that, we would put a blue one on there, right? And if you can tilt battles, you can put a lot on here in the might battles. So that was this one, where we won that one. And then over here, we're going to do the same thing for might. So here we've got 1 might, and we've got 2, 3 might. And then the French have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're going to put 2 on here. So they're kind of... They've got the initiative in this one, we've got it in this one, and then over here, well, the French don't have anything in this row at all, so we've got 2, we're just going to add 2. So we'll remove 1 and we'll add 2 there. So that's resolving might battles. Then we go back, again in this order, and it's always that order, left to right from the French's perspective. You're going to resolve a zeal battle. And a zeal battle is you compare the zeal, and it's whoever has the most places 1. It's really simple that way. It's not, you don't have the difference, doesn't come into effect. It's just whoever has the most places 1. And if it's a tie, then you both put 1. If it's a tie because neither person has any zeal, then neither of you put any. But most of the time you're going to have some amount of zeal, hopefully. So this instance, we've got 1 zeal, 2 zeal, against 1 and 1, so we both have it, so we both place 1. And you can see here, that's 1 round of combat in this area with the 2 different types. Well, it's now 6 to 1, and we need to get 11. And we already had a couple on here because the British arrived early and were able to do some zeal battles. And we arrived early because the British got through their objective deck to Waterloo before the French did. So there was a few turns of me bopping on zeal before the French could even kind of get there and fight that battle, so to speak. So that's kind of what the objective of this game is it's getting through the game, and then there's this end game phase where you're fighting these battles over and over. And so during the card play, you're trying to affect not only placing new guys in your tableau, but hopefully removing guys from theirs. And that's where things become really important. Before then, it's knocking out a few guys here and there and trying to be, trying to get bits where you can, but you want to efficiently race through your objectives as quick as possible. And so to play cards out of your hand, you're going to have to pay this cost in resources. And resources are either little green icons down here that you can tire, not tap. So you can tire this guy, that's 1 resource of the 4 needed. We could tire this guy, that's 2 of the resources needed for the 4. And then we can discard cards to get 2 more. So we can discard those 2 cards, and that means we've paid 4 and we can play this guy out. And he can go into any one of our rows. Let's put him here, because that way we can kind of really tilt this and kind of race through this. Or we could put it in the middle to try and even out some of this that's going on so that the French don't overwhelm us too quickly there. And so that's the tactical choices, is where you're putting guys in. So that's something you could do. The toss-up to that is now these guys who are tired, none of their stats contribute to the combat. So where we had a really strong lead of might, and it was evens on zeal, we're now going to lose both of those combats here because we only have 2 zeal and 1 might and 2 zeal against 2 zeal and 3 might. We're going to lose both elements of combat in that because we did that. So there's a lot of trying to get cards or to tap things where it's less important, and managing your resources are very difficult in this game. It's very challenging in a really great way. That's the fun part of the game is, do I just hang on to, instead of playing this card, do I hang on for another turn, get a couple new cards, and play it all out of my hand instead of tapping guys? Tapping guys is a bit easier early on in the game. When you're racing through objectives, you might only need, for example, you only need your zeal in this one. So if you have a guy who's like, this guy doesn't provide any zeal, and he had a little green resource, you're like, cool, it's really easy to tap that guy. It's really easy to use those resources earlier on because it's easier to sacrifice that thing. So when it comes into this Battle of Waterloo phase, really, really challenging. But when you play guys, they can have actions on them that, again, after they're played, later on you can tap those to do, well, you can tie them to do things. You know, you can remove 1 damage from every British unit, card, or character. That's a really strong action to play with this event. This guy has an action, you can tap him to tie it. So you tie this card to give it a might +1 token. He gets a might +1. He's now, instead of being a 2 might, or a 1 might, he's a 2 might. And that might not seem a lot, but if you can do that early, it's really, really, really good to get these extra bonuses. You can really overwhelm people in that way. But that's, I mean, it's not a complicated game. The game is a kind of a, I don't want to say standard, but if you've played LCGs, especially in the FFG style, you will be entirely familiar with this. If you've played things like Magic the Gathering, you should have a good understanding and knowledge of like hand management, resource management, timings, and things like that. And it's all that stuff, but with absolutely stunning artwork and a really nice historical theme on it. And again, we played this a couple of times, and it was really, really enjoyable. It was so fun, and it was nail-biting at times, and at other times it was like, oh yeah, this is a card game, and I'm getting absolutely ruffle-stomped. And that's okay. Like, it can happen. But yeah, that's how this game works. You know, if a guy dies, everyone moves forward a space. Moving guys is quite difficult, especially when you're filled up, because the spatial element, you basically have a 3x3 9-card square, and if you're all filled up, moving guys around is nigh on impossible. And so it's like, oh, do I sacrifice guys to move them forward so I can play a better guy out of my hand? And they always go into the reserves, and as the front lines die, they come forward. It's a nice little element of theme to it as well. But really, again, not complicated, but that is how the game works. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that's how the game works.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, not complicated.
Pretty simple.
But again, we've talked about a lot of the kind of elements in this game, and for a card game like this, I felt like the thematic mechanics they put in fit really nicely.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of consideration about how to spend my influence and my card management and hand management, my tableau management in 45 minutes. It was really good. I was really impressed with what they did with that.
Now we just played the traditional 2-player competitive game. I was looking here in the back of the rule book. I mean, you've got 4-player games.
Yes, for 4 players, you have to buy a second set.
Right. A lot of these kind of games, if you buy a second set, you can play together.
Yeah.
You know, that's cool. There's a variant for 3-player games. There's cooperative games. Now, I haven't read that, but you can
play against the solo bot.
Solo bot, yeah. You've got some rule changes here that there's a lot of detail. So one of the comments we made early, are you going to get tired of this because it's the same thing over and over again? I think you can do these different.
Yeah, you can shake it up.
Yeah, and then there is the Give Me Night expansion, which is the Prussian expansion. So you got to drop another $25 or $30 probably.
Oh, my goodness.
And then they've got the Hebs Weather deck,
which comes.
Does it come with it?
No, that's sold separately. There was some variant cards in here though
that were tied to that?
that I don't know what they. Yeah,
Okay.
like I don't know. Like this
Scum
this
of
is,
Kill Forth.
Yeah, there's little promo cards that come in it,
Okay.
but I don't quite know what those.
But what I'm saying is you've got 2.5 pages of variants.
yeah.
And I think that's just going to add some depth to what you do with the game.
And again, we only played it twice tonight.
Yeah.
But those games were wildly different in how they
Absolutely. The second one, you beat me to Waterloo, and beating someone to Waterloo that badly kind of gives you a head start. You were
Yes.
gaining damage points to all 3 of these frontiers. Once it got to 4 and 3 on one, I'm like, okay, I can't do anything about that. So I ultimately conceded because, as you can see on the board, I only had 3 units. You had killed off several of my units. Now, I'd put a cannon out, and I was going to try to kill your guy, but it never worked out. I really like this. It was really fun.
Yes.
I enjoyed it a lot.
And again, I think it helps that we have a background in these kinds of games, that I like this style of
Sure.
card game. And I'm like, yeah, probably will look up the other ones. Probably will look up the other ones in the series.
Well,
It's a beautiful artifact. I can't speak
yeah.
highly enough of it. And there's always space in my collection for these little, much less relaxing, less taxing games that it's like,
Sure.
we can tag it on the end of something really big that we've played that sapped my energy.
while the games are nothing alike, if you remember Napoleon 1815 from Worthington,
Yes.
I liked that game too because it was a card game, completely different.
Very
Nothing like this, but a light style game that we played, I had a good time with.
Yeah.
Right?
Quick playing,
Yep.
light. They absolutely have a space.
Yeah. So to me, this game and that game are those games you want to put on your shelf for that 30 to 45-minute game at the end of the night. And I think anybody can play
Well,
this.
that's it.
Anyone
it's
can
that,
play
or
this.
this is the game you pull out at Christmas to play with
Right.
your dad, or
Yep.
like, because you could just trick people. Hey, I got a card game. Sure, they got Napoleonics on it.
Yeah,
But it's just
don't
a
worry
card-
about that.
It's just a card game. Look at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
Count the numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
But very cool. Production's great. Art is fantastic. The box is real. I mean, it's a good 3-inch box that, I mean, you don't need half of that.
Totally unnecessary.
Yeah, it could have been a 1-inch box.
But I appreciate it.
Yeah, it
'Cause if
looks
I get
good.
the other ones, I'll stick it in there.
Yep.
Weather deck, Prussians.
Sure.
The other thing, the wooden tokens, right? It would have been so easy to cheap out
Yeah.
and just like have a cardboard sheet.
Yeah.
But those are like super nice to play with.
Well, and it had cardboard tokens, but they were really nice tokens.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
these
a great
are
little graphic design on them.
they're pre-rounded, great graphic design. They're dual-sided.
Perfectly scented.
Under what conditions does someone get negative might? I don't ever remember seeing cards that did that. Did I just miss them?
I don't know. I don't know if I
Okay.
saw that either.
Because that to me would be something I would do to your cards. I had some cards that mired you,
Yes,
that
but
threw
that's the
those
Maya
rain
token,
mud
yeah.
tokens.
Maybe
But-
there's stuff in the
Prussian or
the Prussian expansion that does that.
Because that might have been cool. Because sometimes that's what happens with the frontiers. You can see the other side's built up significantly in either zeal or might. And it's like, oh crap, I can't do much about that. Other than
Maybe with Blucher coming so late and it's getting nighttime and that's why it's dark.
maybe that, and when that what it was called,
Yes, here comes the night.
yeah, that's what it was called, right? Give me the night. So yeah, maybe it's like it's
Maybe.
dark and yeah, but it's, to me that shows the depth of this game, and it's just a card game. I mean,
Yeah, like-
most of the components are cards.
It's not. I'm impressed with the little nuggets and the bits of depth in there.
Yeah.
Without it, 6-page rulebook.
Yeah, I really like this. It's called the Historic Epic Battle System.
Yep.
I would really like to get
I mean-
1565 and 1066.
Yeah.
There's no reason that now those are older games. I think 1066 was the first.
Yes, I
And
believe
it
so.
came out maybe 5-6 years ago. St. Elmo came out, I want to say like around 2019 or 2020, but they're just solid games.
Yeah,
You can't
well-
have enough of these kind of games in your collection.
There's like this full solitaire bot thing in it.
Yeah.
Now, I can't speak to the efficacy of that 'cause I've not played it, and I've met one person who didn't like it.
Okay, didn't like it,
But-
because did they say why?
They just said that like it wasn't a good solo bot.
Okay.
But like
That could mean any number of things.
Yes, but I also don't know if I care because I'm going to play this 2-player.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. Having played this 2-player, I don't need to play this solo. Like,
No.
This is a 2-player game.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, because
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it.
So I will say, this will be one of my final comments. This is a 2022 game.
Yes.
We have now played, I think it's 41 different 2022 titles.
Yes.
The comment we made tonight was that I'm not sure either of these games is going to end up on any top
I wasn't
10
expecting
list.
this to move the needle, but
I don't know that it did. There were a lot of really good games this year, and a lot of really, I mean, I think my list has like 4 Hex Encounter, maybe 5 Hex Encounter games on it.
there was some really good ones this year.
And that's with GMT only releasing a couple of Hex Encounter games.
And there's still, there's a couple of those we didn't even get to.
So I only bring that up because I enjoyed this enough that I'm now going to have to sit down and think about that.
This far exceeded my expectations, and I had high hopes for it.
Yeah.
Like, again, you have to understand that this game is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, you can't put it in the same category as something like, BCS Arrow Corps, right?
This does not compare to
don't-
Barbarians at the Gates, BCS Air Court, any of those games.
But the level of fun that I had playing it does match up with some of those games.
And as much as I enjoyed Salerno 43 and those, I really enjoyed this.
This was
because
a great
it was
time.
a 30-minute game, very competitive, well put together, easy to understand, easy to learn.
Thank goodness for easy rule
Yeah.
books. Oh,
And on top of that, beautiful art.
yeah.
Beautiful production. I'm going to have to think about it.
I got out of this exactly what I wanted to and more. And
Yeah,
so
I agree with that,
I can't
100%.
ask for more from a game than that. So, check out 1815 Scum of the Earth.
One other comment. Scum of the Earth was a statement made by, I think it was Wellington.
Probably. That sounds like something he would say.
I swear that he made that comment about the French soldiers or something. But I'm trying to rack my brain. My hard drive's
don't know,
pretty full.
and maybe I should.
But I almost am sure that was a British quote about Napoleon and his army.
It's funny. I'm reading War and Peace right now.
Oh, yeah.
Which is Russians. And,
Yeah.
But they use a similar phrase all the time.
Okay.
But it's translated by an English author, or an English translator, and he uses lots of English phrases. So I'm like, I could go either way. I don't know.
What I would say, I am not a Napoleonic expert, right?
No, not even a little bit.
But the Emperor Napoleon dominated Europe for how many years?
He dominated Central Europe for about 5 years.
Right, I mean, the guy kicked some butt, right? So I think people hated him because of that.
They couldn't have hated him more, but they
Yeah.
also hated him because of his stupid god complex.
Well,
and
yeah,
he
there
was
was-
a terrible diplomat and
Sure.
all sorts of things.
I just bring that up because it's interesting. I don't say I'm an Indiana basketball fan. I don't say good things about Purdue basketball. I just don't.
Yeah.
It's not. I will call them scum of the earth.
None of us say anything nice about Bonapartists.
Yeah, right.
And if you're
So,
one,
anyway.
get out.
Kind of a cool historical title. I know Tristan, when he went through that, he chose that specifically.
it's iconic.
And I think he took some, I want to say he took some heat over it. But that was from people who didn't know history, right? Which is it's fairly common.
They just thought it was like French bashing, probably.
Right. So
There's always space for that.
trying
too.
to remember, but if you're interested, I did a very extensive interview
Yes.
with him for the Kickstarter, and you can read that on the blog. So great game. Really enjoyed it. Had a good time.
Yes.
Enough said.
1815 Scum of the Earth from Hall or Nothing Productions. Check it out if you're interested. Once again, I got this on Noble Knight Games. You can always find it there. Appreciate you tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.